Stop. Before you spend another dollar on garden beds, expensive soil amendments, or that extra plot of land you've been eyeing, I need you to hear something that most gardening channels will never tell you. The biggest harvest I have ever seen did not come from the ground. They came from pots. Ordinary, everyday pots sitting on a balcony, a patio, a tiny apartment doorstep. And before you roll your eyes and click away, just give me 30 seconds. Because what I'm about to show you in this video completely changed how I grow food. And it's going to change how you think about gardening forever. The question isn't whether you have enough space. The question is, do you have the right crops in the right containers? Because if you don't, you're leaving an embarrassing amount of food on the table without even knowing it. Asterisk. Welcome to Evergreen Garden Life. If you are new here, please like, share, and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me what time you are watching this from, whether you are in the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, or anywhere across Europe. Now let's get into it. Here is something that has been quietly frustrating gardeners across America and the UK for years. People invest in large raised beds, they till soil, they battle weeds, they deal with pests crawling up from the ground, and at the end of the season, their harvests are modest at best. Meanwhile, someone with nothing more than a sunny balcony and a collection of pots is pulling out more food than they can eat in a week. How is that possible? The answer is not luck. It is not some secret gardening technique passed down through generations. It comes down to one thing: knowing which crops are biologically designed to thrive in a confined space and produce abundantly when given the right conditions. You see, most people treat container gardening like a consolation prize. Like it is something you do when you cannot have a real garden. But that thinking is completely backwards. Containers, when used correctly, give you a level of control over your growing environment that open ground simply cannot match. You control the soil. You control the drainage. You control where the sun hits. You can move your crops when the weather turns. You can protect them from frost. You can position them against a warm wall in early spring, and extend your growing season by weeks. Container gardening is not the backup plan. For these 16 crops, it is actually the better plan. But before we get into the list, there is one thing you absolutely need to understand, and this is the part most gardening videos completely skip over. Not every crop belongs in a pot. There are plants that will sulk, struggle, and disappoint you in a container no matter what you do. But there are others, and these are the ones we are talking about today, that have what I call a natural root to yield advantage. What that means is simple. These crops do not need vast amounts of underground space to produce impressive results. Their root systems are either naturally shallow, naturally compact, or they are so efficient at pulling nutrients from a limited volume of soil that they produce yields that will genuinely surprise you. That is the science behind why these 16 crops explode in pots while others fail. And once you understand that principle, you will never pick the wrong container crop again. Now, before we get into crop number 1, I also want to talk briefly about soil, because this is where most container gardeners quietly sabotage themselves without even knowing it. Research into container growing has consistently shown that the composition of your growing media is one of the single biggest factors in determining how much food your pot actually produces. It is not just about buying a bag of potting mix and calling it a day. The ratio of your soil blend, how much organic matter is in it, how well it drains, how much it retains moisture without becoming waterlogged, makes a dramatic difference in growth outcomes. For the crops on this list, you want a mix that is rich in organic matter, drains efficiently, and holds just enough moisture to keep roots consistently hydrated without sitting in water. A good general blend is 2 parts quality potting compost, 1 part perlite for drainage, and 1 part well-rotted organic matter like worm castings or aged compost. That combination creates the kind of environment where these crops do not just survive, they absolutely take off. Alright, let us get into the list. Number 1, tomatoes. If there is one crop that has proven itself in containers over and over again, it is the tomato. And the reason is straightforward. Tomatoes are heat lovers, and containers warm up faster than ground soil, especially when positioned against a south-facing wall or a sun-soaked fence. Compact and determinate varieties like Tumbling Tom, Patio, and Tiny Tim are specifically bred to thrive in confined spaces, and they produce an extraordinary amount of fruit relative to the space they occupy. Use at least a 5-gallon container. Keep the soil consistently moist. Feed with a high-potassium liquid fertilizer every 2 weeks once flowering begins, and you will be harvesting tomatoes from midsummer right through to the first frost. The mobility of the container also means you can chase the sun throughout the day, something a ground-planted tomato simply cannot do. Number 2. Bush beans. This one surprises people every single time. Bush beans are one of the most underrated container crops in existence. Unlike pole beans that climb and sprawl, bush beans grow in a compact, upright habit that is perfectly suited to a pot. They have relatively shallow root systems. They fix nitrogen into whatever soil they are growing in, which actually improves soil health over time. And they produce a continuous flush of pods over several weeks. A 2-gallon pot can comfortably support 3 plants. Harvest the pods regularly and the plant responds by producing more. It is one of nature's most generous feedback loops. In the United Kingdom and across cooler parts of Europe, bush beans in containers against a warm wall can start producing weeks earlier than their ground-planted counterparts. Number 3. Lettuce. Lettuce is arguably the perfect container crop, and here is why. It is shallow-rooted, it grows fast, it tolerates partial shade better than almost any other food crop, and it follows the cut-and-come-again principle beautifully. You harvest the outer leaves and the plant just keeps producing from the center. A single wide, shallow container, even something as simple as a window box, can give you fresh salad greens for months on end. In warmer parts of America and southern Europe, position your lettuce container somewhere it receives morning sun, but is sheltered from the harsh afternoon heat. In cooler climates like the UK and Northern Europe, a sunny windowsill or south-facing balcony is perfect. The harvesting cycle is continuous and deeply satisfying. Number 4. Spinach. Spinach in containers are a match made in gardening heaven. Fast-growing varieties like Bloomsdale and baby leaf spinach thrive in shallow pots and produce nutritious, tender leaves in a remarkably short time. Like lettuce, spinach follows the cut-and-come-again method. Pick the outer leaves and the plant keeps growing from the middle. Spinach also has an interesting microclimate advantage in containers. Because you can move the pot, you can keep it in cooler, shadier spots during warm spells, which prevents it from bolting too quickly, and bring it back into the sun when temperatures drop. This level of control is simply not possible with ground-planted spinach, and it dramatically extends your productive harvest window. Number 5. Radishes. If you want the fastest return on investment in container gardening, radishes are your answer. Some varieties are ready to harvest in as little as 3 weeks from sowing. They are incredibly shallow-rooted. They thrive in almost any container with decent drainage, and they are perfect for filling gaps between slower-growing crops. Plant them at the edges of your tomato or pepper pots, and they will be harvested long before those crops need the space. In America, they are a staple of urban balcony gardens for exactly this reason. Succession sow every 2 weeks, and you can have fresh radishes available almost continuously from early spring through to late autumn. Number 6. Carrots. Now here is one that trips people up. Most gardeners assume carrots are too deep-rooted for containers, but that is only true if you are growing the wrong variety. Compact varieties like Parisian, Nantes, and Chantenay are specifically bred with shorter, rounder roots that thrive in deep containers of around 12 inches. The key is loose, stone-free, well-draining soil and consistent moisture. When grown in a container, carrots are also completely protected from the carrot fly, one of the most frustrating pests for ground growers across the UK and Northern Europe, because carrot fly travels low to the ground and simply cannot reach an elevated pot. That alone makes container-grown carrots a serious advantage. Number 7. Peppers. Hot or sweet, peppers are exceptional container performers, and they actually prefer the warmer root zone that pots naturally create. In the United States and Southern Europe, where summers are long and hot, peppers in containers produce abundantly. But here is the real advantage. In cooler climates like the UK, peppers in ground soil often struggle to produce because the season is simply not long enough. In a container, you can start them indoors early, move them outside when temperatures rise, position them against a warm south-facing wall for maximum heat absorption, and bring them back inside at the first sign of autumn cold. That mobility turns a borderline crop into a genuinely productive one. Number 8. Kale. Kale is one of those crops that container gardeners in America and across Europe are starting to take very seriously, and for good reason. It is extraordinarily cold-hardy, meaning it keeps producing long after most other crops have given up for the season. It grows well in medium to large containers, tolerates partial shade reasonably well. And because you are harvesting individual leaves rather than pulling the whole plant, a single kale plant in a pot can feed you for months. The container advantage with kale is particularly significant in early spring and late autumn. You can move pots under cover during unexpected cold snaps, and extend your harvest window significantly beyond what open ground kale can offer. Number 9. Swiss chard. Swiss chard is one of the most visually striking and productively generous crops you can grow in a container. With its brilliantly colored stems in red, yellow, orange, and white, it looks spectacular on a patio or balcony while simultaneously feeding you generously throughout the season. It follows the same cut-and-come-again principle as lettuce and spinach. It tolerates both heat and mild cold better than most leafy greens, and it grows happily in a container as small as 5 gallons. Research into container growing media has specifically highlighted Swiss chard as a crop that responds dramatically to good soil composition. The right soil blend can multiply its yield significantly compared to a standard potting mix. Number 10. Strawberries. Strawberries were practically made for container growing. They are naturally compact. They produce runners that can be propagated into new plants. And ever-bearing varieties like Albion and Seascape produce fruit continuously from late spring right through to the first autumn frost rather than in one concentrated flush. In the UK, strawberry pots and hanging baskets have been a staple of cottage gardens for generations, and for good reason. The container elevation also protects the fruit from slugs and ground-level pests, which is one of the most common frustrations for ground growers across Europe and North America. A sunny spot, consistent watering, and a potassium-rich feed is all they ask for in return. Number 11. Dwarf peas. Peas have a reputation for needing lots of space, but dwarf varieties completely rewrite that story. Varieties like Tom Thumb, Sugar Ann, and Little Marvel have been specifically bred for compact growth, and they thrive in containers of 5 gallons or more. Peas are also one of the earliest crops you can get into production in spring. And because containers warm up faster than ground soil, your pot-grown peas can be weeks ahead of anything planted directly in the earth. They are also nitrogen-fixing, which means they are actively improving the soil they grow in while they produce. Once your pea harvest is done, tip that enriched soil into your next container planting, and watch what it does for your next crop. Number 12. Cucumbers. Cucumbers in pots are an absolute powerhouse when set up correctly. They need a larger container, a minimum of 5 gallons, good vertical support like a trellis or stake, and consistent deep watering. But when those conditions are met, a single cucumber plant in a container will produce more fruit than most people expect. Bush varieties like Bush Pickle and Spacemaster are bred specifically for containers and compact spaces. Position your cucumber pot against a warm, sheltered wall that receives full sun. The reflected heat from the wall accelerates growth and fruit production significantly. In warmer American states and southern European countries, container cucumbers can produce prolifically from early summer right through to late autumn. Number 13. Spring onions. Spring onions, also known as scallions in parts of America, are one of the most space-efficient crops you can grow in a container. They grow upright. They need very little horizontal space. They can be packed relatively densely into a pot, and they are ready to harvest in just 6 to 8 weeks from sowing. A single medium pot can produce a continuous supply of fresh spring onions through succession sowing. Plant a small batch every 2 to 3 weeks, and you will essentially never run out. They also pair brilliantly with other container crops. Plant them around the edges of tomato or pepper pots where they act as a natural companion, and use every inch of available container space productively. Number 14. Potatoes. Growing potatoes in containers is one of the most satisfying experiences in all of container gardening. A large pot, a grow bag, or even a sturdy bucket filled with good quality compost can produce a genuinely impressive harvest of fresh potatoes. The technique is simple. Plant your seed potatoes in the bottom third of the container, cover with compost, and as the green shoots emerge, keep covering them with more compost until the container is full. This encourages the plant to produce tubers all the way up the stem. And when harvest time comes, you simply tip the container out into a wheelbarrow and collect your potatoes. No digging, no guesswork, no damage from a spade. Early varieties like Swift and Rocket are particularly well suited to container growing and can be harvested in as little as 10 weeks. Number 15. Mint and herbs. Mint deserves a special mention here because it is one of the few plants that gardeners are actually advised to grow in a container. Not just because it is convenient, but because mint is aggressively invasive in open ground and a container is genuinely the best way to manage it. Inapot, mint trives. It produces lush, aromatic foliage continuously throughout the growing season, and you can harvest from it repeatedly without slowing it down. Beyond mint, herbs as a category are among the most productive container plants by yield-to-space ratio of anything you can grow. Basil, thyme, rosemary, chives, parsley, all of them thrive in containers, all of them follow the cut-and-come-again principle, and all of them save you money every single week compared to buying fresh herbs at the supermarket. Number 16. Dwarf courgettes and zucchini. This last one is for the viewers who want something dramatic. Dwarf courgette and zucchini varieties like Patio Star and 8-Ball are genuinely jaw-dropping in containers. A single plant in a large pot, we are talking a minimum of 10 gallons, will produce courgettes faster than most families can eat them during peak summer. The key is positioning. Place your courgette container somewhere it receives maximum sunlight. Water it deeply and consistently, and feed it every 2 weeks with a balanced liquid fertilizer. The container also allows you to elevate the plant slightly off the ground, which improves air circulation around the leaves and dramatically reduces the risk of powdery mildew, one of the most common problems with ground-grown courgettes across the UK and Northern Europe. Now here is the part that ties all 16 of these crops together. And this is the insight that most gardening content completely overlooks. Every single crop on this list benefits enormously from container mobility. The ability to move your pots is not just a convenience, it is a genuine growing strategy. When temperatures drop unexpectedly in spring, you move your pots under cover. When a heatwave hits in summer, you reposition your leafy greens into shade. When one area of your garden or balcony loses sunlight as the season changes, you follow the sun with your containers. This level of responsive, adaptive growing is something that no ground garden can replicate, and it is one of the most powerful tools available to any container gardener willing to use it intentionally. Container gardening also plays a quiet but important role in crop rotation. When you grow in pots, you can literally empty, refresh, and refill your soil between crops, removing any disease pressure that builds up in ground soil over time. Issues like wilt, root rot, and soil-borne fungal infections that plague traditional garden beds year after year simply cannot get a foothold in a well-managed container system, where you are regularly refreshing your growing media. And here is the honest truth that I want to leave you with today. If you have tried container gardening before and felt like it did not work, if your pots produced less than you hoped, if your plants looked healthy but never quite delivered, it was not because container gardening does not work. It was because nobody gave you the right combination of information. The right crops, the right soil, the right placement, the right harvesting approach. That is what changes everything. And now you have it. You now know which 16 crops are built for container growing. You know why they perform better in pots under the right conditions. You know what your soil needs to look like. You know how to position your containers for maximum growth. You know how to harvest in a way that keeps your plants producing instead of shutting them down. That is a complete framework, and most gardeners spend years piecing that together through trial and error. If you found this video genuinely useful, and I truly believe you did, then I want to ask you something. Not for me, but for every beginner gardener who is out there right now making the same mistakes you might have made before watching this. Share this video, because that person trying to figure out why their balcony garden keeps disappointing them needs this information. They just do not know where to find it yet. And if you are watching this and you have not subscribed yet, I want you to sit with that for a second. Every week on this channel, we put out content that gives you real, practical, research-backed gardening knowledge. Not filler. Not recycled tips. Real information that changes results. If you leave without subscribing, there is a very real chance the next video we release, the one that could answer the exact gardening question you have been struggling with, will go up and you will never even know it existed.